Okay, welcome. This is now the fourth time of me attempting to record this. I was using OBS instead of a better screen recorder cut down version, and it just lagged so much that you couldn't actually see what I was doing. But there's a purpose to this video. So we have the new recall versions of the bins. We have a Japanese version and we have an Australian version. And given that I've said this is the fourth time I'm recording this, there's already one there, but I'm just going to copy across all my settings from my existing one. I don't want that. I want to open my existing 22 file and work our way through it. So these particular settings are system-wide. They don't actually change except when Woolwich changes them on you. These values are probably out of date, but they're kind of just needed for the auto tune. Um, right now, I'm not running any auto tune stuff because my tune's already worked out. The air intakes are the same, uh, the air filter's the same, the exhaust is the same, the cylinders haven't changed, the valves haven't changed, nothing's changed mechanically. Um, the only thing that's changed is the programming on the ECU and how it listens to and drives the electronic throttle valve. So the recall was because the ECU was sending too many small, very fine, very rapidly changing, but not significantly changing adjustments, and it was literally wearing out the sensor that sits on the edge of the throttle bodies and messing that up. So we've done, hopefully this is recording this time. So we've done the configuration and actually I'll go back to that. So we combine the fuel maps, the cylinder fuel maps. We do not combine the ignition maps. That will cause you all sorts of hell. Your ignition will be all over the place. I know a lot of people complain about some of their tunes. Um, there's a good chance the tuner that did it accidentally clicked that on the new bin without thinking about it, because you can see I've opened a new bin here. Someone's got to go in here and they probably just go, oh, click, click, done, move on. And the next thing you know, they, without realizing that they're not supposed to do it on the MT-09s, there you go, or on the Gen 3. Gen 4 is probably exactly the same. Anyway, back to this. So settings are, we want these ones and this one, the fan temperature. Um, we need the closed loop and we want the fuel cut. Fuel cut is, this is 90% of your, the feel, the difference in feel of your bike is disabling fuel cut. It just massively reduces the engine braking. It goes from being, extreme to pretty tame. So um, that is what we want there. Now we get into the meat of it. So that's the fuel maps. So we've got some changes in here. We're just going to copy them across. This is the IAP map, and we can see that's there. Now, I have done it. There's no actual changes in this uh, between the stock bins. Yamaha really have done the absolute minimum when it comes to pushing this out. All of the changes are in software, which is also in the bin file. They haven't done, they've done almost no changes to the maps. So we're now on TPS. So let's copy the TPS across. And hopefully that showed up in the video, or I'll be recording a fifth time, but I've gone back to my old recorder. The lack of change in the maps is good for us, or good for people who have tunes. It's not good for the tuners because, and this is probably one of the big ones. So this is the ignition map. We've got the 23. This is the ignition map. So what we'll do is we'll go to gear 6. Technically this is gear 6, even though it says 1 to 6. Because in other maps we have the adjustments that it does to gear 6 in order to get it to 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. So this one is the raw 6, gear 6 map. If we take this and we copy it over this, we get absolutely no change. So the ignition maps are identical, and this is a big one. All right. So Any tuner who says they can't just copy it across and they have to start from scratch is trying to rip you off. But then they're tuners, that's their job. Now I'm going to open that up again and position them before I get carried away. So this one is there and positioned there. So electronic throttle valves. Now this is an area where I do have changes. So, but I don't have them. Well, obviously on my drag racing, my drag one, I've got a lot of changes and they're all in mode 3. But this is just my day to day. So yeah, I don't have any changes except for gear 3 and up. So actually, if you want to see, oh, that's neutral, but if you want to see, so gear 1, and here we have gear 1, and this is throttle position sensor. Oh, so okay, so there's some small changes, not enough to worry about. Point 1, all right. So anyone says they have to start from scratch, um, just for that, yeah. If we look across, yeah, nothing. So I wouldn't even bother with that. So I'll just undo that. I'll go back to values so I don't get lost. Go back to gear 3 because I have significant changes in gear 3. Not significant, just I took out the dip and fleshed that out a bit. So let's select all of that, copy that in, and yeah, it's got this one change here from 1.7. Well, it used to be 1.7, it's now 1.6. So if we look at the value trim here, it's that. So we'll set that back to 0. We come back and look at the values. Yeah, it's 1.6. So over here, here, so those 4 versus those 4. Okay, so nothing really significant. So gear 4, there we go. There's a small highlighting there for my changes. They're a bit less there. Gear 5, gear 5, so a little more significant. Select all of that, and there we go. Yeah, a little bit of a dip there, a little bit of that, just to smooth it out. And gear 6. Did that go to gear 6? Okay, gear 6. Okay, so that's that. Now I'll open that back up. And we'll go to the electronic throttle valve limits. So these are the peak limits in any gear. It doesn't care. And I had to up these in order to smooth out those throttle maps. Oh, sorry, the throttle electronic throttle valve maps. So let's just grab all of that and move that over to here, because if you can up the throttle maps on, or the electronic throttle, you can up these as much as you want, but if they exceed these values, it just won't apply. So we've actually confirmed that. I played with that, went out, wrote it, came back, checked the logs, and it was like, yeah, it doesn't let you go above these values. So that's the ETV limit. Okay, now we will go to ETV multiplier, right? So you can see these are exactly the same. They haven't changed for this one. These ones I thought were interesting because I believe, from what I've sort of read, that this is the bike's understanding of torque under certain circumstances. So a lot of this stuff actually drives things like traction control and whatnot. Not something we go near, but those values, I know there's a lot of maps, so I'm not going to step through them all. But there's no changes to them. So this new recall version, they have really just changed the software, and that's it. This is the engine braking, no changes there. although if you copy it, it does. So there's a few decimal places we're not seeing. Um, so ignition trim, so this is where it turns gear 6 down into the adjustments to make 6 into 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. There's no changes here. All right, and ignition dwell, same thing again. There's no changes whatsoever. So if we close that, go to the limiters. I've kept the rev limiter where it is. I don't have a need to go higher than that. So I'm not particularly worried about that. And at this point, we save our 23 file. And like I said, it's the fourth time I've done this. So looking through this, straight up, any tuner that says they need to start from scratch is trying to rip you off. Any tuner that says it's significantly different and all that sort of stuff, they're talking about their ass. So just point out, it's like, if you have a tune and your tuner's trying to bullshit you, just say, look, you've seen it online. The maps are exactly the stock maps are exactly the same. The hardware, as in your bike, um, hasn't changed. Your cams haven't changed. Your airbox hasn't changed. Your air filter hasn't changed. Your exhaust hasn't changed. All right. So the fueling and ignition should all still be the same. There's no need to muck around with it. So you should be good to go. Where there will be a change will be on my decoder. Um, because one of the things I have on my log file decoder is um, an auto tune adjuster. Like, so I tweaked the file to correct the electronic or the TPS electronic throttle valve values to get all of the right uh, AFR readings into the right cells. But and that comes down to this particular part that's being replaced, because there's a bit of calibration involved in that, and I think what Woolwich originally decoded for their bin files is a different value to what I have, but that's really only impacts auto tune. If you've already got a map, then you're fine. um, so it's only if you're using that particular bike to capture auto tune data and your ETV calibration doesn't match what Woolwich has, then you need to tweak your your bin file that you're feeding into AutoTune. Not an easy thing. For most people, it's not really a major issue anyway. It's just me being pedantic because I can. Um, but anyway, this is out there. It's in Australia. Obviously, it's available for the Japanese bikes, and presumably Europe and the US will be quick to follow. So good luck with everything, and yeah, talk to you later.